the hardest inbuilt challenge that Phasmophobia offers is the Golden Trophy Apocalypse Challenge, or as the community calls it, the APOC 3 challenge. It requires the player to complete an almost perfect investigation with a whopping 15 times multiplier. To make matters worse, this challenge must be played on Sunny Meadows, a map that is widely considered to be the hardest in the game. However, there is one problem. Your success almost entirely depends on RNG. And since the Apocalypse Challenge requires you to clear only one map, you can simply just restart until you get a more favorable ghost type, ghost location, or objectives. But what if you couldn't just restart? What if you were forced to play in less than favorable scenarios because giving up would mean wasting hours worth of effort? This is the Phasmophobia complete all of the maps in a row on insanity mode, but they also have to be perfect investigations, and if you fail one, you have to restart everything. Challenge. I am not allowing you to sniff me. Oh, I'm filing a restraining order on you.
Killing myself. How about I skin your ball? If I could exterminate every single Goryo off this planet, I would not even...
The rules of the challenge are as follows. Do a successful investigation on every map on Insanity difficulty. Each investigation must be a perfect investigation. The investigations must be completed in succession, meaning if you fail on a map, you are to restart everything. The map order can be anything your heart desires. And finally, you must complete the challenge without any bugs or glitches. Now, right away you might be thinking, isn't Insanity a much lower multiplier than the 15 times that we see in the Apocalypse 3 challenge? Doesn't that make the challenge much easier? Well, yes. However, that absolutely does not mean that the challenge is in any way easy. Phasmophobia is programmed in such a way that almost every single gameplay aspect is randomized. Every time you press start, the game randomly decides on a plethora of things such as ghost type, ghost, bone, and breaker locations and objectives. During the game, ghost movement, ghost activity, hunting timings, and even evidences are all randomized, meaning that you could be playing flawlessly and still be screwed over by a bone spawning completely out of your reach. And this has a chance of happening at any point in the run, completely out of your control. And so, going into this, we have to create a strategy to optimize the parts of the gameplay that we can control. So, how do we create the ultimate strategy? Well, first of all, let's figure out what a perfect investigation on Insanity difficulty entails. There are no cursed possessions, your sanity starts at 75%, sanity consumption is twice as fast, medication only restores 20% of sanity, the sanity monitor and the site activity monitor are completely unusable, most of the hiding locations are unavailable, and most importantly, the ghost will only provide one piece of evidence. This means that we will have to get a really good feel for sanity drain, as well as each ghost type's behavior. Although this isn't a no evidence challenge, we will still have to heavily rely on our knowledge of the ghost's hidden abilities to help with the identification process. As for what those abilities are, I will try my best to explain them as we discover them later in the challenge. Of course, the singular evidence will be extremely helpful too. There's one interesting thing that Phasmophobia does when it comes to which evidence the ghost is going to reveal. You see, some ghosts have something that is called a forced evidence. This is an evidence that the ghost will choose no matter what, and as you can imagine, this is especially helpful in Insanity. For example, a Hantu will always have freezing as its only evidence, and it makes a lot of sense since Hantu becomes faster the colder the room is. Similarly, a Moroi can choose the spirit box evidence, and that's the only way for it to use its ability, a curse, which causes uncontrollable sanity drain. The remaining ones are Obake with forced ultraviolet, Diogen with spirit box, and Goryo with dots. So, for example, if we figure out that the evidence is freezing, we will be able to completely rule out Moroi since we know that it can only choose the spirit box evidence. So we can figure out the ghost type, but what about the perfect investigation? At the time of recording this challenge, for an investigation to be considered perfect, we need to complete 3 randomized objectives, take 10 3-star photos, and find the bone. That's of course in addition to identifying the ghost. Taking the photos is relatively easy, and finding the bone is completely RNG dependent, so we don't need to include them in our strategy. As for the objectives, here's a list of them. And by far the hardest one among these is the infamous capture a photo of the ghost objective, and there's a good reason for that. You see, the best way to complete this objective is to wait for a ghost event. The only problem with it is that it's completely RNG. Sometimes the ghost spends 40 minutes doing only invisible ghost events, sometimes it doesn't do events at all, or worst of all, disappears the second you right-click the camera. Of course, you can also take a picture during a hunt, but then you'll be dealing with timing the blinks as well as, not dying. The good news is the rest of the objectives are easy enough and we can complete most of them automatically while trying to identify the ghost. Before we move on to the ultimate strategy, there is one thing that is extremely important to our success in this challenge. That is sanity. I mentioned before that we have to really get a good feel for how it drains. But why exactly is that? You see, in Phasmophobia, sanity acts almost like a timer. As your sanity decreases, the ghost becomes more aggressive and eventually reaches the threshold to hunt. And once it starts hunting, it will continue to do so repeatedly. This essentially means that your safe investigating time is up, and from this point, it becomes a lot more difficult to do objectives. Find the bone, gather evidence, and etc. Thankfully, however, sanity drain can be manipulated in a lot of ways. Medication boosts sanity by 20% each, and holding a firelight reduces sanity drain by 66%. That, in combination with avoiding dark rooms, will allow us to conserve as much sanity as possible in order to give us ample time to complete the investigation. So, having learned all that, the base strategy is simple. Enter with a firelight to decrease sanity drain. Find the breaker first, then search for the bone. Usually by the time we find the bone, we will also have found the ghost. This also gives the ghost enough time to substantially decrease the temperature in its favorite room, allowing us to confirm its exact location. After doing so, we first bring in equipment that I consider passive, such as writing books and salt. Then we bring in the active equipment, like dots, ultraviolet, and the video camera. After we've either confirmed the evidence or lack of thereof, we focus on the remaining objectives on the list, leaving hunt and sanity relating ones for the end. If the ghost is aggressive or we need to buy more time, we bring in a crucifix. Sounds pretty simple, right? Initially, I decided on this map order. I knew that firstly, I needed to get familiar with the large maps, since up until this point, I've mostly been playing on the small ones. I also didn't really know what I was doing. The amazing ultimate strategy that we just talked about was only developed after I've gotten comfortable with the challenge. Would I have done the challenge much faster if I had just sat down and thought the strategy through immediately? Yes. But where's the fun in that? The very first map in this map order is Sunny Meadows. It contains a total of 69 rooms spanning across 2 floors. It is split into the main, male, and female wings upstairs, and hospital restricted wings downstairs. This map also contains a couple of dark rooms where sanity will drain regardless if the lights are on. Going into this game, I wasn't exactly the most knowledgeable yet, or the most experienced, so I ended up making a couple of mistakes. The worst one by far is using the lighter as a means to prevent sanity drain. A lighter does not equal a firelight, although both can be blown out by the ghost. Another mistake is that I used the tier 3 headgear to search for the bone. It's not the most terrible option, however it is much worse than just a simple flashlight which provides much clearer vision. Despite these mistakes, I successfully managed to get the bone and the evidence. Eventually, I noticed that the ghost became faster and faster as my sanity drained, which is a clear sign of a Moroi. And the first run ends up being a surprising success. The second game is where I slowly start to realize that this challenge may be harder than I had initially predicted. Brownstone High School contains 64 total rooms and 2 floors. It is relatively easy to navigate due to its intuitive structure. But unlike Sunny Meadows, this map severely lacks line of sight breaks, making it much harder to escape the ghost. Going into this, I very quickly realized one excruciating problem. This map is absolutely atrocious for finding the bone. I mean, look at these classrooms. What the hell happened? There's so much shit on the floor. Even if the bone was a giant silly skeleton, I might still miss it. Step aside, Sunny Meadows. I now hereby crown Brownstone High School as the hardest map in the game. And so, unsurprisingly, after gallivanting, absolutely zipping and zooming around the entire map twice, I failed to find the bone and ultimately take my first loss against the mythical bone gods. Oh, hey, by the way, this is a brand new channel, and if you're enjoying the content, I would be very, very happy if you subscribed. Thank you. Okay, let's continue now. Let's go. In the following run, it takes me a whopping 37 minutes to find the bone, which really signifies just how much time this mind-numbing task is going to take each time we attempt a large map. Regardless, I complete the objectives and figure out that the ghost is a myling due to how quiet it was during hunts. With this game completed, I unlocked the Tier 3 incense. I think this is a good part to briefly explain how it works. While burning, incense can either apply a cleanse or a blind, depending on whether there is a hunt ongoing. In the case of a cleanse, if the ghost is not hunting and is within the range of the incense, ghost activity will be increased marginally, and it will be unable to hunt for a while. Meanwhile, a blind essentially works as a stun, which makes the ghost unable to kill you for a short duration of time. The specific effects of the incense depends on its tier. Tier 1 simply blinds, but does not affect the ghost's movement. Tier 2 slows, while Tier 3 completely stops the ghost. The length and the range of the blind also increase with the tiers. A lot of people actually prefer Tier 2 over Tier 3. The reason being that the ghost might simply wander away from you as you blind it, allowing you to either make greater distance or even repel the ghost from your hiding spot. However, it is a double-edged sword due to, you guessed it, RNG. The ghost might instead choose to wander towards you, making your escape harder and forcing you to abandon your hiding spot. To minimize the influence of RNG in my games, I ultimately chose to stick with the Tier 3 incense. Feeling confident, I hop straight into Sunny Meadows and once again take way too long to find the bone, which ends up neatly packed behind a pillow. The ghost ends up in the worst room in the entire map. It's big, dark, and very far away from the entrance. Discovering EMF 5, I was met with a choice between Oni and a myling. The main way to distinguish an Oni is its fast blinking speed during hunts, so of course I looked at it and thought, you know, I guess that's pretty fast. I mean, it's probably an Oni.
Welcome back. There's some jobs ready for you.
After failing to find the bone a couple of times and also dying to the ghost, I finally got quite lucky. Yeah, it was a Yurei. The next game was just as easy. I caught the ghost switching forms, which is a unique trait of an Obake, and with that we can finally enter Prison, our first medium-sized map in the map order. Prison is interesting because despite being a medium-sized map, it sports the biggest rooms in the game. That, combined with the severe lack of hiding spots, this map often becomes harder than the large maps. Luckily for me, however, the ghost was at the entrance, and after noticing its extreme inactivity, I ended up correctly guessing shade. And we're back in Sunny Meadows! Restricted. Not much to say here. It's Sunny Meadows but smaller. The main difference is that the foyer can now be chosen as his favorite room. However, the ghost in this game decided that it didn't want to be so close to the entrance. Oh god no, that would be too easy, so of course it chose the furthest possible room as its favorite. Not only that, it continuously harassed me, again, and again. But after some hunts, I noticed that the ghost was either slightly faster or slower than the normal speed, which is a defining trait of twins. And with this game completed, it was time to make our first entrance on Maple Lodge Campsite. Although I didn't know it back then, but this map will eventually become one of my least favorites in this entire challenge. Being one of the two maps set in the outside, weather actually matters here. This map is the definition of unintuitive, with weird alleys, asymmetrical layout, confusing hiding spots, and scattered rooms. In this game, the ghost decided that it wanted to be as far away from the entrance as possible. But worry not, I am a highly skilled ghost hunter and absolutely nothing can go wrong. Some questionable games later, I finally unlocked the Tier 3 Crucifix, which will allow us to defend against hunts slightly more effectively than the Tier 2. Another fun fact about crucifixes is that the range is actually increased by 50% when the ghost is a demon. Speaking of which, I identified a demon in the following Sunny Meadows game due to how fast it hunted. Unlike most other ghosts, a demon's hunting threshold is 75%, which means that in Insanity, it's capable of hunting instantly. A demon can also activate its ability to hunt at any time, no matter the sanity. In games like these, all you can do is rely on RNG and crucifixes to keep yourself safe. Thankfully, however, the following game I was met with a much gentler ghost. A Diogen. Dio, my beloved. Oh my god, you're so beautiful.
beautiful.
Dio is a very interesting ghost. It's probably the most unique ghost in the entire game. That is because it has a very special speed mechanic. It becomes slower the closer it gets to you, making it almost completely harmless as long as you don't run into a dead end. After succeeding at yet another game, my good luck didn't last. I ran into the ghost. Not once, but twice. I looked for the bone, and I failed to find it. So I looked for the bone again, and I failed to find it again. And would you believe it? I looked for the bone, and of course, I failed to find it again. As you could imagine, I was getting a little bit tired of the repetitive gameplay of staring at the floor for hours. So I decided to switch things up and completely reverse the map order, placing Tanglewood as our first small map. Tanglewood is the first map that most players play on. It has a very simple layout with a bunch of small rooms cluttered on the left, a living room, garage, connected dining room and kitchen, and basement. In this map, to my mind, it is best if the ghost is in any of these rooms at the entrance. Speaking of, what actually makes a good ghost room? I'd like to split these aspects into a checklist. Does the room have a door? Is the room small? Does it only have one entry point? Does the room have a main light? And relating to that, is the room not considered to be a dark room? Does the room have a small light? Does the room have interactable objects? Does the room have windows? The more of these you can check off, the better the room is, at least in my humble opinion. All of these aspects increase our chances of spotting stubborn ghosts, such as Mare, whose only ability is to turn off recently turned on lights, which I wouldn't be able to do if the room didn't have any. A less specific example is finding the ultraviolet evidence. It might be near impossible to discover it if the room didn't have any windows, doors, or any other interactables that the ghost can leave fingerprints on. Of course, we can overcome this by using salt. However, it is a single-use item, and if you don't catch the ultraviolet when it steps in it, you might lose the chance to catch it altogether. But anyway, heading back into Tanglewood, you know the drill. Bone, photos, evidence. After the hunt, it becomes clear that it's a phantom due to its very infrequent blinking, and with that, we can move on to the Grafton farmhouse. Please note that this is the old version of the map. As of the Chronicle update, this information is now completely obsolete, but let's take a look at it anyway. Grafton definitely feels and is bigger than Tanglewood. There are 2 floors with a lot of open space and looping rooms. It is also the home of my personal favorite hiding spot, these 2 bookshelves beneath the stairs. They're as central as you can get on this map and are also very close to the main entrance. However, that doesn't matter much when you forget to bring in incense and end up dying to the ghost before you can even get to it. Why is my thermometer sliding? Why is my bone hiding away from me? These are the questions I still don't have answers to, but I do know how to discover UV, and I know how to do a silly little dance which takes me straight into Camp Woodwind. This map is special to my heart. It's one of my favorite maps in the game, and also my most hated. As you can already tell by the name, it's Maple Lodge Campsite's little cousin. It's very open, asymmetrical, and the only reliable hiding spot is the stinky bathroom. For some reason, and this is true for Maple Lodge as well, the hiding spots in these little tents, as well as behind these barrels, sometimes just don't work. To make matters worse, just like its bigger cousin, this map is greatly affected by weather conditions, and of course, upon arriving, I was greeted with snow. What does this entail? Well, it doesn't stunt the gameplay that much. It does make finding the ghost a little harder due to the fact that the default temperature is much lower than usual. Everything goes well until I make the most great mistake a ghost hunter can make, which is turning off the flashlight remotely. For some reason, if you turn off the flashlight via hotkey and then cycle back to it, it turns itself back on. But of course, I never panic in these situations and everything goes exactly as intended. Well, here we go again.
Welcome back.
Okay, we finally made it to Bleasdale. And once again, note that this is the older version of the map. Bleasdale is not an easy map by any means. Although it was at the time considered a small map, the overall layout made it feel huge. It has 3 floors and a lot of rooms both in the first and the second floors. To be honest with you, it is a map that I've always avoided and I wasn't exactly prepared for it. Regardless, after some sneaky calcium, evidence, and a hunt, it was clear that it was a Hantu. As I've mentioned before, Hantu is a speed ghost which is fast in the cold and slow in the warmth. Riding on the way of successful hunts, I immediately continue to Edgefield. This map is not very unique from the rest of the house maps. It features 2 floors and a basement. The upstairs feels very cramped and we really don't want to see the ghost favoring the hallway since the layout is very awkward to work with. Fortunately, after an insanely fast bone, quick snap of a photo, and some questionable ghost events, the ghost reveals itself to be yet another Dio. Once again, it's time to step into a new map. Willow Street. Willow Street is interesting because it's very small. While it is slightly larger than Tanglewood, it feels extremely tiny due to its spacious connected rooms. This map, like most other small maps, has a nice looping spot in the kitchen, as well as a decent amount of hiding spots, although in locations that are kind of annoying to reach. In this game, after completing most of the objectives smoothly, all that's left is to wait for the hunt. With another one in the bag, you know what time it is. That's right, it's time for yet another map. Bridgeview. This one's a classic. This used to be the Tanglewood of the past. Or so I'm told. I don't know, I wasn't alive in the 90s. This map has a nice looping spot, you guessed it, in the dining room. It has a nice looping spot in the dining room. It's very similar to the other small maps, having 2 floors and a basement. However, it has this one specific thing that I really enjoy. A convenient hiding spot right next to the entrance, right behind this fridge. The ghosts in this game probably heard of my flawless investigations in the previous maps and decided to chase me out, which was a good reminder that I should probably be carrying incense with me at all times. Ghost photo. Ghost photo? Ghost photo? But patience is my virtue, and I persevered, eventually capturing the ghost photo. Due to an earlier manifestation of the mare ability and by the process of elimination, I leave with mare, and we can finally move along to the final small map. Point Hope. Well, this map isn't small anymore as of recording, but for some unexplained reason, it was considered small. This map, for a lack of a better word, sucks. It is a giant lighthouse made up of 10 stories totaling 16 rooms. The main difficulty of this map lies in the fact that if the ghost spawns in the top parts of the lighthouse, it takes a very long time to get to it. To make matters worse, in order to not lose sanity, you have to turn on the lights on every single floor, which just isn't feasible. There are no long sightlines, and hearing the ghost is very hard due to how sound is programmed to be very muffled between floors. But hey, at least we have this little guy. I found the bone relatively quickly, however, can you guess where the ghost spawned? That's right, at the top floor. Thankfully though, I quickly discovered that it's a moray, and after finishing all of the objectives, I was finally able to move on to medium maps. Maple Lodge Campsite goes without a hitch, so does Prison and Sunny Meadows Restricted. Sunny Meadows Unrestricted went a little differently though. Capture a photo of a ghost. This entire time, I was dodging this objective flawlessly, but it seems like the game does not want me to get by easily. During this run, I realized one important thing that will be extremely useful to us in finding the bone. That is, lowering the texture resolution makes rooms with a lot of clutter infinitely easier to scan. I found a bone, of course, but can you guess where the ghost was? That's right, it's in the big dark room in the back of the map. Putting aside my atrocious luck, I spent a long time looking for evidence to no avail. That, combined with the fact that the ghost hadn't changed favorite rooms for around 30 minutes, it was fair to assume that the ghost was a Goryo. To discover a Goryo, you have to spot dots through a camera while being outside of the room. However, at this point, I did not care about confirming whether it's a Goryo or not, I still needed the ghost photo. The entire time the ghost did not do any ghost events. The only ghost event it did, it disappeared upon me right-clicking the camera, like it was some sort of sick joke. And so, with the last pill taken and the last crucifix burnt, time is up. But maybe, just maybe, I can still save this. I kept losing, and my strategy wasn't working. I knew something had to change. Up until this point, I was guessing my sanity based on my lackluster experience, oftentimes overusing or underusing sanity pills, as well as mistakenly using the lighter as an anti-sanity drain measure. And so I decided to finally take matters into my own hands and calculate the exact sanity drain timings on insanity difficulty on different map sizes. And so, for my own convenience, I created this table, which shows how much time it would take for the ghost to hunt if the hunting threshold is 50%. With my newfound knowledge in hand, I decided to revise my strategy and try something entirely different, starting with the hunt. The thing is, most ghosts are easily discoverable during a hunt, meaning if I do the hunt first, there's a chance that I can skip evidence gathering completely, saving me a lot of time. In order to do this strategy, I reference the sanity drain and total darkness. If the ghost hunts sooner than expected, we can rule out a bunch of ghosts that only hunt at 50% or lower. Sounds like a simple and effective strategy, right? Well, let's see how that goes. Why is it doing that? Well, it's okay. Let's just try again. Okay, maybe this isn't working too well, but I'm sure it will get better the more I try.
Welcome back. Welcome. There's some jobs ready for you. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what happened here. Maybe I was sleep deprived, maybe it was a severe skill issue. But nothing was going my way, and it is at this point that I do something pretty crazy. I stop playing. Okay, be for real right now. What did I miss? What's going on? I was met with the green hell that is the Easter event. There are a couple of things about this event that affect this challenge. Firstly, the green-yellow lights everywhere actually help out with visibility even when all of the main lights are off. Secondly, the ghost is always the child variation, which makes it a little more annoying to see. And while there were more changes done, they will not be affecting our run whatsoever. Okay, well, that's not a very warm welcome back. Yeah, they decide to attack then, though. Obakis are normal attackers, no? Obakis attack normally, no? Hello? 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 The best way to identify an Onryo is its unique trait, to immediately hunt after blowing out 3 firelights. However, nothing stops other ghost types from hunting at the exact same time too. I'm gonna assume that's not a coincidence, I'm gonna assume that's not a coincidence, I'm gonna assume that's not a coincidence, I'm gonna presume.
Welcome back. I've got some
It was a coincidence. I finally get to play on the new and improved Bleasdale farmhouse, which, let's be honest, we only care about one thing on this map. Oh, how do I just go through? That's so fun! Anyway, everything goes dashingly well. I breeze through the maps without a hitch until I make a very rookie mistake. I forget about the bone. Then I fail to take a photo, after which I fail to take even more photos. You know the drill. Bone, evidence, ghost. Bone, evidence, ghost. Bone, evidence, ghost. Sometimes, even after thorough testing, you are still left with a 50-50. And sometimes Maple Lodge fools you into a false sense of security with its fake hiding spots. It just decides to see me. It just decides, oh wow, you're here. Like, what? Like, that's crazy. Like, that was a win. That's it. The hunt would have been over and I would have just been done. That's it. But instead, I just die. Like, and I can't do anything about it. And other times, the ghost hunts just outside the range of the crucifix. Please, 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 no, seriously. Oh, that's a hunt. That is a hunt. Man, can you stop the hunt, like, right now? Like, why? RNG is capable of anything, and you are the victim in his grippy cold hands. But I did not come this far just to give up. All I need is one good final push. Large maps go by without a hitch. I am able to find the bone, although it takes a while. RNG spares me and gives me ghosts that are easily identifiable during hunts, a Hantu which is based on speed, and an Oni that is based on blinking. Medium maps are a little less forgiving. While Prison was an easy Hantu, Maple Lodge confused me with a rather early hunt, although a later hunt revealed that it's actually just a simple Obake. Sunny Meadows Restricted is where it all starts to go downhill. We haven't had a writing book evidence in so long. All the pictures. Is that right? Oh my fucking god, I called it. We really don't want this to be a shade. Yes, it was in fact ghostwriting. Was it a shade though? Well, the light ruled out a mare, and I was able to rule out Myling and Poltergeist with a hunt. That essentially left me with Spirit and Shade. This combo can very well be a run killer. You see, Shades hunt at 35% sanity, and don't hunt at all while you are in the same room as them. Meanwhile, Spirits, after using incense nearby, can't hunt for a whopping 3 minutes, compared to the 1.5 minutes of other normal ghosts. What can happen is that while checking for a spirit, a Shade may walk into your room and leave at around 3 minutes, making it seem like it hunted at the correct time for a spirit. And that's exactly what happened in this game. However, by this point in the challenge, I've learned from my past impatience. I decided to stick around for 15 more minutes, litter the entire place with motion sensors, and constantly track the exact location of the ghost to see whether it will hunt while in the same room as me or not, or do any interactions. Which it did not, allowing me to confidently leave with Shade. In Point Hope, I was met with an instant bone and an instant breaker. This sort of luck is never a good sign, and instead of walking around and looking for the ghost, I decided to let it cool the room a little more while I brought in the equipment to the entrance. The ghost room ends up being the kitchen, which, once again, pretty lucky. However, this luck will not last long. Please don't be writing about last time it happened, it was not fun. Wow, just place it. Oh man. Yes, it was once again ghostwriting. Thankfully though, I was able to rule out Shade almost instantly due to the same room interactions. The ghost starts hunting and I start to eliminate the remaining ghosts. I do a couple of hunts until something weird happens. The hunts just stop. It absolutely does not make sense for a normal ghost to suddenly stop hunting after it hunted a couple of times. After waiting for a while, I was able to draw a conclusion that the ghost is either a demon, which hunted multiple times using its ability, but stopped due to RNG, or a mare which moved into a lit room, raising its hunting threshold from 40% to 50%. I knew that mare is a much more likely candidate, so I turned off the lights and waited. And lo and behold, an instant hunt. Please, oh my gosh, please, 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 please. Oh my god.
I've prepared some jobs for you.
Oh, what did I do? What did I do to deserve these ghosts? I can't. Hoping to get an easier game, I finally moved along to Bleasdale. The ghost was in the hallway, which is a pretty bad location for the ghost to be, especially when it comes to range-relevant items such as crucifix. But I successfully did the objectives, however finding the evidence was proving to be really hard. It wasn't touching anything, which made it impossible to confirm ultraviolet. I spent a long time checking for Shade, and an even longer amount of time waiting for the hunt, as the ghost spammed one ghost event after the other. It did 2 ghost orb events on me. It did 3 ghost orb events on me. For a triple ghost ball event, it is inactive as hell. I mean, let's say I took... Okay. During the third hunt, I finally noticed it changing forms, and successfully left with Obake, finishing the last medium map. After a good night's rest, it was time for the final push, the small maps. Everything goes well in Bridgeview. I gather that it's a phantom and leave pretty fast. Willow Street was a lot more tricky. After finding orbs, I check freezing and spirit box to rule out mimic. The first hunt was completely uneventful, telling me nothing about this ghost, except the fact that it's normal speed. Another hunt starts and... holy shit, that's fast. But how can that be? Of course, the only ghost that can do things like this is the Mimic. I must have missed the second evidence, and all I have to thank are the RNG gods, because if that Mimic did not turn into a Revenant by the second hunt, I might have never discovered it, and the run would have been over right then and there. Oh my fucking god. Oh my fucking god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. You're actually a Mimic.
Michael Skinner, how about I skin your ball?
Welcome back.
Edgefield's ghost didn't like me very much, however, I liked it a lot, because it was a simple miling and it allowed me to smoothly go straight into Camp Woodwind. Once again, I am met with a very difficult ghost. It ran around the map for a while, changing ghost rooms at least maybe 5 times. The hunts told me nothing, and I started feeling suspicious. I spent a long time testing for shade, using all of my motion sensors and a whole lot of patience. At the end, everything pointed to it being a shade, and I was able to move on to the second to last map, Grafton Farmhouse. Immediately, I noticed a glaring piece of evidence. The ghost was not stepping in salt. Thinking that it's a Wraith, I check in a different way. Both Phantom and Wraith leave an EMF 2 reading after they use their roaming abilities. So I sat in the hiding spot with my EMF, and sure enough, it allowed me to confidently lock in Wraith. And with that, I returned to the map where it all started, Tanglewood. This is it. This is the last obstacle to beat before I can finally count this challenge as completed. But the game will not let me go that easily. And time start. I heard that. That's right. An instant hunt. My opponent is a demon. This is both a blessing and a curse. On the bright side, I don't need to figure out what ghost it is anymore, well, besides the Mimic. On the not so bright side, it's a demon. A ghost that hunts whenever it pleases. Once again, I was at the mercy of RNG. However, when has that ever stopped me? Well, it has stopped me a couple of times, but that's not the point. The point is that during this challenge, I've learned how to play around it, how to influence the odds in my favor. And so, I took as many pills as I could to make sure that the demon can only hunt by its ability and not due to my sanity being lower than 75%. I set up crucifixes, which were really slippery for some reason, and quickly completed all of the objectives. All that was left to do is to double, triple, quadruple check if it could be any other ghost. And after confirming it, I finally reached the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm closing my eyes. I can't. My heart cannot take this. I'm free. I'm free. I am beyond thrilled to spend the next 7 years trying to edit down the hours and hours worth of footage. Now, could I have done this in half the time or even less if I went into it prepared? Probably, but sometimes it's about the journey and not the destination. And now, having won the war, I can finally take a deep, deep rest. Hey, this is the end of the video, and I don't know if you know this, but I am legally obligated to tell you to subscribe now, so subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.